It was a cold Thursday afternoon when Sarah Langford was fired, not because she was late, not because she was careless, but because she was kind in a world that often punished kindness when it didn't fit the rules. She had worked at Tanner's Fine Apparel for nearly 8 years, earning the love of customers and co-workers alike, always with a smile, a kind word, and a heart that refused to turn cold even when life gave her every reason to do so. The store, a small boutique in a worn-out strip mall on the outskirts of Cincinnati, had weathered its share of struggles, especially with the rise of online shopping, and in recent months, the owner, Mr. Tanner, had grown more anxious, less forgiving, more obsessed with policies and numbers than with people. Sarah understood the pressure, the fear of failure, but she couldn't silence her instincts when a young boy, no older than 15, staggered into the store that morning, soaked to the bone from the freezing rain, his clothes torn, his face thin and pale, eyes wide with exhaustion and despair. He didn't say much, just wandered in slowly, his shoulders hunched, his gaze scanning the winter coats on the clearance rack. Sarah didn't call security, didn't scold him, didn't ask him to leave. Instead, she approached him gently, offered him a warm smile, and without asking permission, she pulled one of the coats off the hanger, helped him try it on, and said softly, "This one suits you." She then gave him a granola bar from her own bag, dialed the local shelter, and waited with him until they came. She never once thought of cameras or rules, only of warmth, dignity, and the fragile life standing in front of her. But by noon, she was called into the office and told her actions violated store policy. Mr. Tanner, shaking his head, said, "You have a big heart, Sarah, but this isn't a charity," and just like that, she was let go. She walked to her car in the rain, clutching a box of personal items, her hands trembling as her mind raced through bills, rent, and 1,000 questions about what she would do now. She didn't cry until she was alone, the only sound in her small apartment being the rain tapping against her window as she sank to the floor, defeated and unsure of what came next. But across the street from the store, sitting quietly in a modest cafe sipping black coffee and reading a newspaper, was a man named Benjamin Hartley, a billionaire with a fortune built in the tech world, now retired and known to few outside financial circles. Ben had spent the last several years traveling the country incognito, choosing quiet towns and simple places, dressed in jeans and hoodies, trying to reconnect with humanity, trying to remember what really mattered after decades in boardrooms and private jets. He watched Sarah that day, not just the act itself, but the way she held the boy's shoulders, the way her eyes shone with compassion, the way she didn't hesitate, and it moved him deeply. He had seen enough greed, enough cold-hearted efficiency, to know that what Sarah had was rare, and he knew right then that he had to reach out to her. The next day, as Sarah stared blankly at her computer, job listings blurring together, her phone rang with a number she didn't recognize. The voice on the other end said, "Hi, my name is Ben. I saw what you did yesterday. I was wondering if we could talk." Confused and cautious, she asked how he got her number, but his tone was calm, kind, and he explained that he was a philanthropist looking to support people who made the world better. Skeptical but intrigued, she agreed to meet him at the same cafe across from her old job. When she arrived, Ben handed her a folder. Inside was a proposal, funding to open her own community-driven store, a place where no one would be turned away, where donations and dignity could live side by side. Sarah was stunned, her voice trembling as she confessed she had dreamed of such a place for years. She had even named it in her journal, The Giving Place. Ben smiled, nodded, and said, "Let's build it." With his guidance and investment, Sarah found a vacant storefront downtown, modest but full of potential, and over the next several months, she worked tirelessly to renovate it, painting walls, setting up shelves, recruiting volunteers, and creating a space that felt more like a home than a store. Everything inside was free, but nothing was treated like a handout. Each item had a tag with a story, like, "For the mom starting over," or, "For the teen going to their first interview," and people were invited to take what they needed and, if they could, give something back: time, skills, even just kindness. Word spread fast, and the Giving Place became a haven for the overlooked, the struggling, the lonely. Sarah created programs for single parents, tutoring sessions for kids, and a weekly community dinner where no one ate alone. The boy she had helped, Marcus, returned a year later, clean and healthy, now studying to become a social worker. he volunteered regularly and called Sarah his guardian angel. She never asked for praise, never boasted, only poured her heart into the work each day, learning names, remembering birthdays, hugging strangers who became family. And though Ben remained behind the scenes, he visited often, always dressed casually, always observing quietly, offering advice and encouragement when needed. He told Sarah once, over coffee and cinnamon rolls, that watching her reminded him of who he used to be. Before money and status clouded his view of what mattered, he said, "I used to think impact came from the top down, but now I know, it comes from the ground up. From people like you." His health began to decline quietly, and when he passed away peacefully 2 years after their first meeting, Sarah received a letter and a key. Ben had left her the building, a large trust fund to keep the giving place alive forever, and a note that read, "You showed the world that kindness isn't weakness. You gave people hope. Please keep going." The story of her journey was shared online by one of the volunteers, and it quickly went viral, not because of the money or the billionaire, but because of Sarah's unwavering compassion. Donations flooded in, and similar community stores began popping up in other towns. Inspired by her model, she was invited to speak at conferences, interviewed on national television, and awarded by nonprofits, but she remained the same humble woman who once folded shirts and gave away a coat because it was the right thing to do. Every year, on the anniversary of her firing, she held a celebration called the Kindness Rebellion, where people shared their own stories of compassion, big and small, reminding each other that humanity still had a heartbeat. Her life wasn't easy. There were days she grieved, days she questioned, days she felt overwhelmed, but every time she looked into the eyes of someone who found hope in her store, she remembered why she started. And one evening, as the sun set and children laughed on the sidewalk outside, Sarah stood in the doorway of the giving place, now expanded with a garden, a reading room, and a tiny food pantry, and she felt a deep sense of peace. She whispered to herself, "Getting fired was the best thing that ever happened to me," because in losing her job, she had found her calling, and in being punished for her kindness, she had discovered its true power, not to fix everything, but to remind people they mattered, that they were seen, that they were loved. And somewhere, maybe in the quiet corners of the universe, Benjamin Hartley smiled too, knowing that his final investment was not in stocks or startups, but in the enduring light of a gentle heart that refused to be silenced.